Maybe this isn't the best idea for a video on a Bionicle-centric channel, but hey, stick around. I think you'll enjoy this one. That said, before we get into it, I wanted to go ahead and show off something that actually arrived in the mail yesterday. I was going to be making a video on it yesterday, but it arrived way later in the day. It is an unreleased Lego part. This one right here. And this is from the Vidiyo series. The part number on this, if I remember correctly, is 79965. I had to look on the inside of it to see that and then drop it, of course. But it's a really interesting piece. And the reason that I picked it up in the first place, it's fine, by the way. The reason that I picked it up in the first place was because it's an unreleased piece. And although I don't really collect minifigures per se, I did like it. Something about it feels very nostalgic to me as someone who grew up in the 90s and early 2000s. And there's actually two different versions of this. This one, so suffice to say, before we get into the video topic, this was for a video set called like the Dinosaur Skate Park or something along those lines. I never saw pictures of like full minifigures from this because again, this was unreleased. Still cool to have something like this in hand, of course. But I saw at least the heads for two figures, with this one being the only one I found available for purchase. This was still expensive as a singular piece. It was $18. So yeah, it's a lot, obviously. It's definitely an investment for sure. But I thought it was a really cool piece and I just wanted to add it to my collection. Again, collection as if I collect minifigures. It is literally the most expensive minifigure piece that I own. Not like no chance that anything else comes close. That said though, the other not figure, the other headpiece, let me see if I can actually pull it open really quick for you guys. Hopefully, maybe I've got it open on here. Yeah, hopefully OBS will cooperate with me, is this one right here. It has a very 90s aesthetic to it. I really enjoy it. That said, that's not really what this video is about, but I just want to go ahead and start this off with that. Instead, today, although we're not really talking about Bionicle in this video, I do think that there's something you can take away from it and sort of apply to Bionicle, as well as a theme that is essentially carried by its fans at this point in time, right? Lego's not doing a lot with Bionicle other than little, teasers here and there in certain sets, which I adore, sure. But for the most part, Bionicle is what it is because of that fan base. But Bionicle, at the end of the day, is a series that has kind of been beaten to the ground, so to speak, when it comes to the story, the original story. It can be hard to build a model that fits into it because a lot of the canon figures, people have already gone out of their way and created. And although I think it's definitely important for you to kind of get your build out there, if you've got your own Toa Nadiki that you like better than what is the fanon contest win, or whatever the case, right? It can be fun to get your own voice out there as well with your own builds to create your own canon characters. But it can be just as much fun to actually create non-canon characters and to do so in a way that feels like it fits in with Bionicle, either its story or your story. As you can see back there, again, with that dragon character that I created, Izrakoth, who's not actually a dragon, but that's for a different video, of course. That was basically taking no concept at all. This is not a character that existed in Bionicle and trying to breathe life into it, right? Trying to make it feel like a figure that feels like it could have existed in the era that I was designing for, and of course in that sort of storyline that I'm working on with the Sky Pirates thing. So what does this have anything to do with what the topic of this video? Well, this video oddly enough, it is going to be about Ninjago a little bit. Not the series, because I am not the person to go to talk about Ninjago as a series. I don't really follow it. But I do like some of the sets, and I have liked things that have come out of it in the past. And now with the whole, like, Dragons Rising thing, which isn't, like, exactly a different dimension, but kind of, it's a weird, convoluted thing. Suffice to say, it's, in a way, kind of like a soft reboot, sort of. It's not. It does have the same characters that we had before, but it's introducing new characters as well. And before Dragons Rising was a thing, before it was announced a couple of years ago, I thought to myself, how cool would it be, as someone who not only loves Bionicle as a series, but also who loves Exoforce from way back in 2006 through 2008 as a series as well. How cool would it have been for Lego to bring back something like Exoforce in the form of like this multiversal sort of plot in Ninjago, like Ninjago characters got trapped in a different universe and had to like try to escape it, and the universe they got trapped in was Exoforce, or vice versa, right? Maybe the Exoforce characters got you get the point I'm getting at. Yes, it's silly. Of course, Exoforce has been out of Lego's mind for, you know, nearly 2 decades at this point, but there is a lot of similarity, of course, with Exoforce as a series from back in 2006 and Ninjago, right? They have, though not identical inspirations, pretty similar inspirations for sure. And, you know, the heavier focus on mechs and animal-like creations with Ninjago's final wave with Deep Jungle, and of course Ninjago having a lot of dragons and animals and things like that as well. There's a lot to cover there that I think could work. Of course, giving us these newer ninjas like Eren, like Sora, etc. is also a really nice sort of means to do something like this as well. But it's not out of the question that we see something like this. I don't think it would be for Exoforce, though, because although I think Exoforce has a very loyal fan base to this day, I don't think it's anywhere near the size of something like Bionicle, of something like Ninjago. Does that make sense? Because, again, that is a theme that has basically received no love from Lego for the better part of nearly 2 decades. And so because of that, Lego has no way of guaranteeing any of the kids who are interested in Ninjago right now would know who those characters are in the first place. And obviously, thematically, they are still different. But I think they're different in a way that could be, I don't want to say cohesive, that could be complementary to each other, if that makes sense. That said, of course, you know, I've expanded this thought to like, well, Bionicle, you know, that could be a thing that could replace it, of course, too. I don't see a future where Bionicle replaces Ninjago, because Ninjago is kind of a powerhouse for Lego right now, and obviously it has some years that are better, some years that are worse, but overall performs really well for Lego as a theme. However, I have, you know, made videos talking about the whole like board game kind of idea that focuses as a sort of like diorama / playable game that still brings Bionicle characters back in front of the players, the builders, right? At the end of the day, conceptually, it doesn't have to be Bionicle characters, of course, for that to work. It could be any characters. The characters themselves don't actually play a role in the games, if that makes sense, right? You could change them to anybody you wanted, Ninjago included. But at the end of the day, I still think that something like Ninjago could benefit from a sort of from reaching out to different IPs. So anyway, I've been talking for a little while now. Specifically, what I wanted to talk about today, as long-winded as this video has already been, Ninjago did something new with the introduction of Dragons Rising, or I guess technically before, but you get the point, with the whole Evo system. And conceptually, that's really neat. But in execution, I don't think it's been handled terribly well, personally. What do I mean by that? Well, from what I can tell, we've had a lot of sets get the whole Evo treatment, some mechs as well as some dragons, and I'm focused specifically on the dragons here today, just because that's what I'm more interested in, from Ninjago specifically, because the mechs can tend to feel a little bit samey in some situations, but the concept of evolution in sets is really cool in my opinion. I think that with the elemental dragon that we've talked about in previous videos, it's done well there, although I don't think it's advertised as an Evo sort of thing. The fact that you can take the parts off of that set to build like a little glider is cool, because it means that those parts aren't just sitting aside when they're not in use, right, on the main build, which I love. I love the idea of that. Now, that's not something that is necessarily feasible 100% of the time, but when you know, you create one of these like Evo type sets from Lego specifically, they tend to feel really underwhelming or really just janky, for lack of a better term, right? We're going to take a look at a couple of the dragon characters from this specifically, which I have open here. Now, the 4 characters that you see here all feature that sort of Evo type of gimmick, right? You can essentially take parts off of them, put parts on them, sort of like build them up. But notice how weird some of these look, right? For example, Jay's dragon over here, the color scheme is really nice. It's I think a dark azure with like a bright light yellow, which is a lovely color scheme, of course. But overall, it's just this very lanky, long body on it that I don't think works terribly well in this scenario, right? Especially because so much of that body is static. If there had maybe been a joint in the middle of the body or something, I definitely could have gotten behind that, but that's not what we see here. However, with some of these other dragons, like the fire Evo dragon, the water Evo dragon, the earth Evo dragon, they all have things that I think kind of detract from their final form. I will definitely say that the water dragon feels the best here. With the way that it's shaped, the way that it's kind of curved up, it feels like a set that actually had a lot of kind of focus put onto not just the whole Evo system, but actually looking like a dragon that fits in line with other dragons from Ninjago's history, right? With this sort of like curvy pattern that goes around like the shoulders and stuff here. With that said, though, some of the other dragons here, they just feel off when they're in their smallest form or when they're in their largest form. You add like a middle section, but what is that middle section doing? It's just changing the proportions. But Lego doesn't feel like they've put a lot of focus into those parts. And so it's really unfortunate because I think that there's a lot here in terms of potential that's just going unrealized, because it feels like the Evo thing is kind of an afterthought, right? It's kind of the, oh, you can take parts off it, you could put parts on it, but what do you do in each of these situations? I feel like when you want these characters to evolve, you really want them to essentially, I'm trying to think of how I want to phrase this, to feel completely different's not the right term, because then you're just getting a new thing out of it, but you want each upgrade to feel justified. I think that's the way to put it. And unfortunately, with a lot of these sets, they just don't. Again, I think that the water dragon is the best one here, and it's still, could use some changes, some, tackle some little things on it to sort of modify it further or adjust it further. But it's a really strong starting point, in my opinion. Whereas the fire dragon, it has like really long, weirdly proportioned front and rear legs. The head movement on all of these is very restrictive as well, which is not always that great. The wing movement on the red one is really restrictive too. And then the earth dragon, it's cool in concept, but like these side wings just feel very forced. Yeah, you get the point I'm getting at here, I think. I think that Dragons Rising as a whole has a lot of potential that has just been missed overall. I think for the most part, it's been a pretty good theme, sub-theme, whatever you want to call it, wave or set of waves for the villain characters, because they've all felt fairly massable. I don't think we've seen villain characters get this kind of support, at least in my opinion, since like the Ninjago movie sets from a handful of years ago, where they all felt thematically similar, right? You had a lot of sets with a heavy focus on like sand blue as a color that all had this sort of like aquatic vehicle sub-theme sort of thing going on, and that felt really lovely. And then since then, it has felt like the villains have just been kind of neglected. We've gotten a few sets for sure that have been standouts, but not as many as I would like to have seen. But with each of these sets, or more of these sets, you've been able to actually like mass up villain characters and their tools. They've got the hound animal creature build thing, which is always nice to see, and it's a decent looking set. I don't think it's perfect by any means. And then you've also got like the little mini vehicles that come in a lot of different sets, and all of them kind of pull from the same aesthetics, right? The heavy use of gold, black, dark red, etc., right? And I think that that's working well for them. But when I hear the name Dragons Rising, I feel like I want to see a lot of dragons, right? I want this to be thematically different from other waves. So when we opened up 2024 to just a bunch of mechs and then these three little $10 dragons, they're neat, admittedly, too expensive for sure, but a a dragon theme that has that many mechs feels off to me. And so to see these sort of like Evo sets just kind of, they feel like shelf warmers to me for the most part. Even when they first came out, when they were first revealed, I saw a lot of people that were like, oh, Ninjago's going downhill or something like that, which to each their own. Your opinion is your opinion. That's fine. I don't know, because again, I'm not really somebody who focuses on the theme itself, but I want something very particular. It feels like with my dragon creatures, characters, whatever, right? That's why I think that the elemental dragon, though not a perfect dragon build, is about as close as we have seen from Lego to date, in my opinion, with the exception of maybe the wings being vinyl. I would have loved for those wings to fold, and of course loved some little modifications, of which I have done. Another dragon that I think is really strong for Lego is actually the Heatwave transforming lava dragon. That's a long name, I know. It's a $55 set here in the US, which I think is, again, a bit overpriced. But aesthetically, it looks really clean. It's not perfect, of course. This is not a winged dragon, so to speak. It has little swords on the arms to, I guess, give the appearance of like vestigial wings or something, which is all fine. But the color scheme is handled very well. The shaping is handled very well. It has an identity that feels right. A lot of people also hold up the Fire Dragon from 2021, and I think that's a really good set too. It's not perfect. It absolutely has some flaws, but that felt like a gateway into a new aesthetic for dragon creatures that I hope to see Lego lean into more as time goes on. I guess this turned into a video about dragons. So with all of that being said, hopefully you guys did enjoy the video. I guess those are my recommendations if you're looking for them. The water Evo dragon's pretty decent. The elemental dragon, granted, get it on sale. Don't pay full price. It's way too expensive. Or just get it by itself. That's worth it in my opinion. The Heatwave transforming dragon, long name, that's a good one. And the Fire Dragon's pretty decent from 2021, although admittedly it can use a handful of modifications as well, and probably has the least cohesive color scheme. I'm just going to use air quotes when I say that, just because some parts of it feel a bit patchy or a bit underwhelming. But as an overall set, and especially with those cloth wings, it's quite nice. That's it for me. If you guys enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. It does really help out the channel. And of course, as always, you can check out the conversation in the Discord, Instagram, or Patreon if you want to support the channel and get some perks. Yeah, that's the word I'm looking for. And of course, join in on the comments below. And I'll see you all in the next one. Take care.